Welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. January, not going to be a very kind month to Donald Trump. Going to lose his job on the 20th. And on the 29th, the city of New Jersey, they are going to have a special fundraising event for anyone who wants to push the demolition button to blow up the Trump Plaza Casino. And I go, this is probably a good way to raise a couple of bucks, because in this moment, when the dislike of the Donald is at an all-time high, especially for the folks in Atlantic City whom he abandoned, and did it in such a way where, came out and said, look, I made a whole bunch of money and then I got out, right when everything was about to collapse. So this is kind of a moment where a little bit of a shot. They think they're going to raise somewhere around $1 million for the Boys and Girls Club of Atlantic City. Now, the hotel opened up in '84. He closed it down in 2014 and has fallen into horrible disrepair. So they've been taking it apart, and it will explode on the 29th of January. And maybe if you go to the Boys and Girls Club of Atlantic City, you could buy tickets that maybe you can jump right into the middle of that. Might be a good start to the new year, kind of a rebirth, if you will. Maybe not a bad idea. Bad news yesterday, a record number of deaths from the coronavirus, well over 3,500. Another almost 250,000 new cases reported. This is, I guess, the 11th day in a row that we've had record highs of hospitalizations. Things are bad. But from what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, we've skyrocketed. These last several weeks have been really bad. We have skyrocketed, but it doesn't seem to be going much further. So maybe again, this comes back to us with the holidays coming. And I know that, Mike Pompeo had his big 800-person party that 70 people showed up for. Maybe if we do that, stop going and doing these things, kind of have a laid back holiday season, spend it with the people in our households, be kind of calm. Maybe we get through this, and maybe it's not as horrible as January as I was expecting. Now, Christie, you may remember, former Governor Chris Christie, was infected with the coronavirus. And the way I'm now hearing this story, Chris was in a bad way. Now, he did get the miracle drugs that you and I are, probably not going to get. But Chris got the miracle drugs. And as he said, he was lying in isolation in ICU for 7 days in isolation. And, kind of going, boy, I wish I would have worn a mask. I mean, think about that. I mean, now look, I am in no way, shape, or form a fan of Chris Christie. But there is one of those kind of moments of clarity. And I would have to think, and this is just, kind of spitballing here, that if you're lying in ICU by yourself, isolated from everybody else, kind of like the boy in the bubble, and there's a potential that you could die, going back to that moment that you refused to wear that piece of cloth across your face might pop into your head, and you might, kind of focus on that a little bit. Well, he is now doing a bunch of PSAs, public service announcements on that he was wrong, and he hopes folks will do. In the new video, he says, lying in isolation in the ICU for 7 days, I thought about how wrong I was to remove my mask at the White House. Today, I think about how wrong it is to let mask wearing divide us. Please wear a mask. And that, Chris Christie. Now, I got to imagine that's going to take him off of Trump's Christmas card list. But here's the thing, is he being, honest here? And I think he is. I think that's one of those things that makes you go, wow, I almost died. And almost dying kind of has one of those effects that make you go, maybe I should change things. Just a thought. Now, the news coming out, the vaccines are rolling down the road, and good to my union brothers and sisters who are delivering those much needed vaccines. The UPS drivers are across the country who are doing that. The sad reality is, though, again, this is a hallmark of the Trump administration. The fact that what they're saying, what they're doing don't quite match, and then what they're saying they're doing certainly doesn't match what's actually happening. And today, Washington Governor Jay Inslee tweeted out that the CDC had informed the state of Washington that what the allocation of the vaccine that they were expecting would be cut by 40% next week. And that all of the other states were going to see a similar cut, and no explanation why. I mean, you can go down the list. There are a bunch of them. Illinois, the governor there, Pritzker, kind of said the same thing, said that they were expecting 8.8 million doses. It's now scheduled to be 4.3, which is, I'm not a genius at math, but that's half. That's not just 40%. And Pritzker said, look, I no longer believe projections that they're putting in front of us. He doesn't believe the federal government. I'd say, Governor, you believed them to start? When have they told the truth? And that's the problem in this. Also, the state of Michigan, they're saying they're getting fewer doses than they had been told and expected. And the reality is Iowa, the same thing. They're saying the same thing. They and other states are not receiving what they were told they were going to get. And how do you plan for this? And the governor of Maryland saying, I need to have some certainty so I can make plans on how we allocate this stuff. This kind of insanity and dysfunction, if it's at the top, it rolls down everywhere else. And we're in this weird moment where, there was somebody who blamed it. Oh, it's this computer system. It's Tiberius is the computer system, which is the Pentagon system that's being used to track the vaccines. Evidently, what they're claiming is it had an outdated, inaccurate projection for the delivery. So, okay, that you can blame on. Okay, maybe we screwed up the paperwork. Maybe it's like the movie Tommy Boy, and they just went in and they changed everything, and they sent things that were supposed to go to Cleveland, Ohio, to Cleveland, Tennessee. Maybe that they're that dysfunctional, and everything that our federal government does is we put stacks of papers instead of actually in a filing cabinet. Maybe that's how inept we've become. But here's the thing that gets me. Pfizer is saying that they've not delayed any shipments, that they've done exactly what the federal government has asked of them. And in fact, and this is the part that, again, makes me go, I believe nothing out of this administration. They're claiming their warehouses are full. So it's a matter of literally a phone call. Hey, we need more. I know the people at UPS. I know they would send trucks over immediately. I know any of the trucking companies would be happy, especially the union trucking companies. They would be happy to send over as many trailers as you want to fill up with the vaccines, and they would send them out. And they would get them there on time and unharmed. I know this. And yet, they're still sitting in the warehouse. And it's still being projected that we're going to get 40 to 50% less than what was expected. And we weren't going to get this done as quickly as possible. And again, this is my great fear in this, is that nothing that they say they'll do. And I know we're in this hyper polarized time where we can't possibly hear any criticism of Donald Trump or Alex Azar or any of the people that are working on this. But the reality is we're in a historic moment. It should be all hands on deck. There should be nothing else. There should be no tweeting about, oh, the election was stolen from me. There should be no long holdups over getting stimulus money into people's pockets. It's really crazy. We should be talking about how we get these vaccines out into the hands of the people who can administer them. Because that's the only way any of this turns around. The only way we get our economy back to where it was our lives back to where it was is if we get this virus under control. And as I said, look, it appears for right now that we're coming near a peak. Now that's, again, wholly dependent on us. It's wholly dependent on whether we do the right things going forward. And I said right from the very beginning, months and months ago, stay away from each other, wash your hands, don't breathe on each other, be outside more. Even now, outside in the cold winter, still better than staying crammed inside. And maybe we got a shot. Maybe there's a chance of getting through this. And I keep seeing stories like this, that these states were promised, these things, and they're not getting them. And I'm hoping, and I'll be honest, I'm hoping that with Joe Biden coming in on January 20th, that ends. That we put qualified people into those positions who ensure that we get what we need. And that we hold people accountable if it doesn't happen. Because I'll tell you right now, and this is not a bold prediction. This isn't a crystal ball moment. If this were to happen on January 21st, every right-winger in this country, every Trump supporter, every MAGA hat wearer, every person who voted for Trump would be screaming from the mountaintops that Biden didn't do his job in his administration. They all need to be impeached. They all need to go. Very silent right now. And look, here's the thing. This is the difference between me and most Trump supporters. If it is a scenario where the Biden administration has fallen down on the job and they screw something up, I will be right there with you calling for their heads. This is too big to screw up. But here's the other part of this. This whole virus has been too big to screw up. And all it's been is one screw up after another. We're in this weird moment where half of the country refuses to realize that this was preventable. The severity of this virus was preventable. We could have done the right things. And we turned it into a political statement. Absolutely crazy. And I'm hoping with Christie coming out and saying, hey, protect yourself. And with new leadership in, maybe we got a shot at it. Now, I hear that there may be a deal on the stimulus front. It's not going to be everything that I thought it should be. Personally, I think that the hero passed way back in May. We shouldn't be in the nightmare scenario that we're in right now with potentially millions of people looking at eviction and foreclosure. Right here in Pennsylvania, they're saying about 1.3 million people in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania are at that brink where they could be out in the cold. They could be out here in the foot of snow, thrown to the curb by landlords or banks. Because we aren't doing the right things, because the federal government hasn't helped the states. And they've created another one of these kind of civil war divides. And I keep hearing it from the right. Well, the red states shouldn't have to bail out the blue states. Those blue states, they've got, health care for their public sector workers, and they've got pensions, and, they have social services. Stop and think about the logic that goes into let the states fail. That's what Mitch McConnell said. Let them fail. Let them go bankrupt. That's the goal. That's what they want, which is why there isn't, as far as I can tell, any funding for state and local governments. None. There is talk of $600 per person of a survival check, a stimulus check, and an additional $300 a week, half of what it was before, for unemployment benefits. They're also going to give out $325 billion in aid for small businesses, which I'm in this moment where, sorry, you make the employees whole, and the small business owner I would consider an employee. We help them as well, but the idea of just propping up small businesses, and what's the definition of a small business again? Is Halliburton a small business? Is the Ayn Rand Institute a small business? Is the Lakewood Church in Houston a small business? Are the 1,000 other churches in Houston a small business? I think we need to have a conversation around that. But I digress. They're saying $325 billion in aid to small businesses. So they are going to send out some money. I don't think it's anywhere near enough. $600. I'm sorry. I know that Steve Mnuchin said that $1,200 would last 10 weeks. I think it was it 10 weeks? I don't see $600 lasting the 5 weeks if you do his math through this. We need to get through to the spring. This should not just be a one-time thing. This should be something that is keeping people able to stay home and able to exist. These are survival checks. It's what we need to be able to survive the next couple of months. Seems that simple. And fortunately, in this bill, there doesn't seem to be any of the immunity shield for corporate America, which for me just tells the tale that I think that the race in Georgia really close. And the fact that McConnell's willing to move on this as quickly as he is tells me that this is important to him. Didn't do it to save Trump, but willing to save his own behind, because he's got to know that this is going to play well and hit for him in Georgia, and might save him those 2 Senate seats. Now they're saying by the weekend we should have something, a little bit more information. I don't think it's anywhere near enough, but this is what Republicans have done for a very long time. You go back to the Obama years, when we needed that boost, when we needed that infusion of cash and of economic activity, they always fall down. But boy, when we want to give the rich in corporate America a tax break, the sky's the limit. It's never enough. We can always do more. At some point, maybe we'll learn. So for me, call your senator, call your congressman, yell, scream, carry on. I don't think it's anywhere near enough. And look, it's something we're going to have to build for January 20th and beyond. Just my thought. Love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break, right back.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2008. That was the day UE Local 1110 members at Republic Windows in Chicago began a 5-day occupation to protest the imminent closure of their plant. A month earlier, Republic workers witnessed management moving machinery out of the factory. They began monitoring where the machinery was going and soon learned it was headed for a new non-union plant in Iowa. They planned a possible plant occupation. By December 2nd, management announced the plant was closing in just 3 days. Republic Windows owner Richard Gelman blamed Bank of America for refusing to extend credit just as the federal government had bailed out the banks in a $700 billion deal. Workers learned they would receive no severance or vacation pay despite WARN Act mandates. The next day, they rallied out in front of Bank of America chanting, "You got bailed out, we got sold out." Workers were determined to occupy the plant that Friday when they went to pick up their last paychecks. Police refused to remove the sit-downers, and the occupation quickly made national news. Local labor leaders and trade unionists, activists, and politicians all visited strikers and lent their support. Journalist Carrie Liderson recounts the events in her book Revolt on Goose Island, noting the donations of food, blankets, pillows, sleeping bags, and other necessities that poured into the factory. Protests of Bank of America spread across the country. By the following Wednesday, workers learned that though they could not keep their plant open, they would at least win severance and vacation pay. In 2012, some of those workers reopened that plant under the name New Era Windows as a worker-run cooperative. They specialize in energy-efficient vinyl windows. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter @laborhistoryin2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I said, on January 20th, Donald Trump loses his job. Thank goodness for that. And on the 29th, the city of Atlantic City in New Jersey is going to blow up his casino, or his former casino. And I'm sure you can get tickets from the Boys and Girls Club of Atlantic City to get your chance to be the one to actually push the button. That would be that'd be kind of a good Christmas present, your chance to blow up his casino. But the question is, where's he going to go? The folks in Mar-a-Lago have filed suit. They don't want him back there. What's the Donald to do? And here to share some thoughts on what that may actually happen and what look like. I've asked Ruth Ben-Ghiat to come talk with us. She's a professor of Italian studies and history at New York University, and also the author of The Strongman, Mussolini to the Present. Ruth, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you.
So the question, that's been a big question on a lot of people's mind. Where does Trump go, since a lot of people don't seem to want him? I've got friends who are saying he's going to start a TV network. He's not going away. I've got friends who are saying he's going to Russia. I doubt. What do you think?
I don't think he's going to leave the country because he's very much an American type, doesn't know any foreign languages, and above all, he would never give up his 70-plus million souls he's so carefully cultivated, because this is one of his biggest successes. One of his only successes is to create this real personality cult. And we've seen how, even though he mismanaged the pandemic and everything else, they have clung to him. So he's not going to give those people up. He's going to do something. He may say he's going to run for office so he can keep having rallies and have that adulation, but I don't think he's going away.
No, I agree with you on that. I'm of the mindset that, and I'm fully expecting on January 20th him to have some alternative event, to do something to take attention away and put it on himself. Because all of this, what we've learned the last 4 years, if nothing, is that it really is all about him.
Yeah, and in that he's consistent with all the authoritarian leaders I've studied, and some of them wrecked democracy completely, and others weren't able to do that. But they all have a real difficulty leaving power because regular leaders, like with a small d, democratic leaders, for them it's a time to think about their legacy, maybe their presidential library. But for people like Trump, who really crave that adulation and control and the ability to humiliate people and dominate them, it's like a psychological death leaving power. And that's partly why he has been so dysfunctional, trying everything possible to stay in power, as well as the more prosaic desire to avoid prosecution.
Right. But do you think that he really doesn't know that he lost, that he's fighting this until the very end because he really thinks there's a chance that he could pull, defeat or victory out of the jaws of defeat? Or do you think, as I do, that this is just more of the con that we've seen over the last, several decades, a couple of decades with this guy, that he's got us on the hook and he's going to milk it for everything that it's worth? I'm curious your thought.
Yeah, I think that's right. And remember that he didn't expect to win.
Right.
And he started this rigged election business in case he lost.
Yeah, and I've been saying that for the while, because he really thought he was going to launch a TV network back then.
Yeah, and so he was surprised that he won. And this is also consistent with all the people I've studied. Unfortunately for us, Trump has the same personality. And the more you know about this, the more you can praise God that we did the right thing and we voted him out against all odds, because it was not going to be pretty had he stayed in office. But yeah, so he has to. He knows very well that he lost, but he has to think of the future, and he's going to take with him not only his personality cult, but his victimhood cult. Whatever he does, he's going to remain the same kind of polarizing personality, because it's not just that I don't think he'll really run in the end in 2024, but these people build dynasties. And so Ivanka, they're moving to Florida so she can run for Senate. She's been marketed as a world leader already. He inserts her into the world leader photos, the G20, and it's very disgraceful. So there's a lot, more. His legacy is the legacy of this kind of money laundering family who need to stay in power for all kinds of reasons.
That scares me, because a lot of people I know are like, I can't wait till the 20th because this pain will all be over. And from what I'm getting from your piece that you'd written, the op-ed you'd written over at the LA Times, he's not going away. In fact, we'll probably get more of him than we had before.
Well, he'll do his best. He may indeed at work because, of course, the turning on Fox News was classic because these men, they have a use and discard philosophy toward everyone, and time and again people think they're immune. Oh, well, I've been so loyal to him, but it's like, what have you done for me lately? You could be loyal for 10 years and then you do one wrong thing and
Look
you're
at
out.
Bill Barr, yeah.
Right. That's what happened also to Fox News. So he's not going away. I mean, he won't be a president anymore, so the media will have a different focus. And there's a good and necessary discussion going on about like turning the channel off of Trump, because this is what it's been very good for the media, all his antics, and he's known masterfully how to direct media attention away from his corruption and to his outrage of the day. But we're going to have a new kind of way to treat him, which is also protecting democracy, because his aim, make no mistake, his aim is to keep us polarized and to keep America as unstable and chaotic as possible to discredit the Biden-Harris administration.
Now, because I remember in school reading about, the fascist era, Mussolini, Hitler, and all of that, and I remember going out, having people going, how could you be so stupid to fall for this? How in Italy, how could they fall for Mussolini? And I'm going, well, we now have our own marmalade Mussolini right now. How did half of the country fall for this? Because I look at him and I go, I read his tweets and I'm going, this isn't accurate. I get people all the time who want to tweet at me, things that didn't happen or different, new definitions of words that have been long settled, and I'm afraid that this continues.
Yeah, one of the reasons I wrote the book, because I had studied fascism for years, and I saw this happening in a textbook manner in America. And although I'm not a specialist in American history, I think this was useful because I was able to kind of look from a global lens and turn it on America and see that everything was happening just like it happened over and over again. So I wrote this book that looks, back 100 years, but it's the first book to place Trump in perspective. He's the end of this, or he's, going up to the present. I also have Putin and Erdogan and other people. But every time these people come on the scene, sometimes they're from outside politics, and they pose as saviors. They tell, people that everything is terrible and they're going to fix it. And they also get people to bond with them. And many of them have a past in media. Like Mussolini was a journalist. Mobutu in the Congo was a journalist. And Berlusconi was in TV, just like Trump. So they know how to be what you need them to be. And they promise you what they think you need to hear. And it works. And once people bond to them and they start believing in them and they anchor to them, then they'll believe whatever they say. And so I saw this happening just like in history all over again with Donald Trump, and that's why I started writing about this, to warn people.
Now, I look at this and I understand what you're saying, and I've met people who are just like that. But I think about it from my own perspective. There's never been a politician or really anyone that I've elevated to that level to where they're going to solve all the problems, that they're going to fix things. There are politicians that I've liked. There are politicians I haven't liked. I never bought the hero complex or the savior complex that we seem to want to have. So what is it about us that wants that savior? Is it that we just don't want to do the hard work, or do we think that someone has magic? I don't know, but I don't get that savior complex.
Well, it turns out that there are certain conditions, like historically, that recur when these kinds of figures find success, because there's always these figures around. Donald Trump himself has been around for a long time. In fact, he wanted to run for president, like some years ago, but it wasn't the right time. So instead, he did the birther controversy about the conspiracy theory about Obama's birthplace. But then it became the right time because there were 8 years of an African-American president that many people never accepted and thought it was a total end of civilization that someone like that could even be president. So what I saw in my research is time and again, these people succeed when there's been a lot of progress in racial equity and gender equity and workers' rights, and this makes many people very angry. And in the Euro-American world, it's white males, in particular white people, who feel worried about demographic change. And by the way, so this isn't new either, because I have a quote in my book from Mussolini in 1927 talking about how white people are going to be vanquished because, quote, yellow and black people were reproducing too much. So all of this script is old. And at that moment, they come forth and they say, I'm going to save you. I'm going to make the nation great. And people fall for it because it's the politics of fear, and they want somebody to look up to and who's going to solve all their problems.
So do you have any hope for where we are? I mean, we seem to be right now so dug in on our polar opposite positions. And I know people I've known for years who have bought into the whole Colt 45 thing. I don't know that you can move them away from where they are. Do you have any hope that they have, an epiphany, that they see the light, or do we have to just let them go off and extinguish themselves at some point? I'm curious where you see that happening.
So there's a core of people, as long as Trump's really around, stoking their fire and their love, because they love him, right? There's a core of those people that are not going to be very reachable. But I also think that there were other people who really, maybe they didn't love Trump, but they were persuaded by this propaganda that Biden was going to bring socialist apocalypse, right? Everything was going to fall down. And so there were, surges in gun sales. And I think that some of those people who didn't care for Trump but voted anyway, after they see that, Biden and Harris have been in for a while and socialist apocalypse is not coming, and in fact, perhaps, COVID will hopefully start to diminish and a different kind of care will be shown to the population, because Donald Trump really didn't care if Americans live or die. He just cared about, making a profit. But some of those people, I believe, are more persuadable. But we have to do a lot of grassroots listening and outreach, because we can't just give up. If we give up, then that is a recipe for another Trump to come along.
Right, and that's my greatest fear right there, that we get the next Trump, only much more functional and less crazy. Yeah,
and that will be part of the plan for the GOP, and I am concerned that they are even now preparing this kind of psychological political warfare to make America as difficult to govern as possible, which is why, of course, the way these guys are, if they can't have power, they're going to drag everything down. Right. So Trump is, trying to make things as difficult as possible, as undefended. Even here we have the news of the the hacking and all that. So I do worry that there's going to be incitement to chaos and other things that will make conditions even better for a savior. But we also have an opportunity to push back against corruption, to push back against polarization, and it's a big agenda, because of course the first thing that has to happen is taming coronavirus. But we do have an opportunity, and history shows that it is worth doing that extra work. And I think that all of us we've seen that our rights and our freedoms are much more fragile, and we have to kind of build democracy work into our daily life. I think it's going to require a change of our habits.
Yeah, and I've been saying, since the election, it's going to take us to have those uncomfortable conversations with Trump supporters who, we've kind of gotten into this, like we've dug into our foxholes on each side of the road. At some point, we've got to reach out to the ones we can, and then let the ones we can't go. Wander off into the great beyond. Save what you can and move forward. But it's going to come back to Biden's going to have to figure out how to control this virus, get the economy moving, and make people's lives better and it's all going to come out in the pudding. But, I keep coming back to this election and how having screwed up the response to this virus as bad as he did actually got more people to come out and vote for him, and in such a way that was defiant to the call of the CDC and to personal safety. It's shocking to me.
It is shocking, but it's consistent with. This is why I really think we have to look at Trump and the whole phenomenon around all the dynamics like this in the lens of authoritarianism, not in democracy. Because once that personality cult, bonds, once it consolidates, and once there's enough years of propaganda, like he's been relentless, hugely successful with hammering home messages through many different ways in society. Once that bonds, it takes a true disaster to get people to wake up and realize that what he's saying is not the truth. In fact, and this isn't comparable because these were real dictatorships, one-party states, but it is notable that in Italy and Germany, the only thing that got people to realize in a mass way that Mussolini and Hitler were frauds was when they were bombed by the Allies. And it was only in 1942-43 that people started insulting these leaders publicly because no one wanted to do that before you could go. Secret police would hear you. And then all of a sudden, when real hardship came and they saw that their governments didn't care about them, and Hitler retreated to his bunker at the end, he just left everybody. And that's when people started to protest, and people started to kind of insult their leaders, and the whole thing fell apart. So that's an extreme case, but it does show that it's challenging to break through the barrier of the personality cult.
No, and we've got a long, long road ahead of us. Lots of conversations, lots of work to be done. The book, Strongmen, Mussolini to the Present, written by Ruth Ben-Ghiat. We'll get links out on social media, how you can check that out. Also, her website, ruthbenghiat.com. We'll get that out. But Ruth, I appreciate you taking some time for us, sharing your thoughts. Have a happy holiday. Thanks so much.
You too. Bye.
Good stuff. Let's take a quick break. Again, check out the book, Strongmen, Mussolini to the Present. We'll get links out. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1944. That was the day that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt rescinded Executive Order 9066. It had forcibly relocated over 120,000 Japanese Americans into internment camps. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the government considered Japanese Americans a national security threat. By 1942, many were given less than a week's notice to sell and store all property. Whole families were rounded up and taken away to desolate areas in the west and southwest of the United States. Up to this point, many Japanese Americans in California were employed in the agricultural industry, some as tenant farmers. They were responsible for 40% of all produce grown in that state, whose crops were valued at $40 million annually. Over 6,000 farms consisting of 200,000 acres were confiscated. Once interned, they were subjected to dire living conditions with little in the way of running water, sanitary facilities, or medical care. They were subject to forced labor in the construction of camp buildings and cultivation of near barren lands. The government hoped to make the camps self-sufficient. In Poston, Arizona, they were made to build the infrastructure for Colorado River Tribe's reservation in order to consolidate other tribes onto the land. When Japanese Americans were finally released, most found their stored belongings stolen and their homes, jobs, and farms confiscated and redistributed. After the war, they continued to face violence, job and housing shortages, and racial discrimination. Ronald Reagan would sign the Civil Liberties Act in 1988. It acknowledged that internment was based on, quote, race prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. The act served as a formal apology and sought to distribute billions in reparations.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So we find out, new study out. This is one of those things that really, I got to tell you, just stuff we've known over the years, and it's only taken us 50 years to figure this out. But according to this study from the London School of Economics and King's College in London, the tax cuts that we've been given to the very rich have made inequality much worse. Gee, it only took us 50 years to figure that one out. Maybe it won't take us 50 years to figure out how to fix it. And here to share some thoughts on maybe how we fix our inequality problems, I've asked Ben Phillips to come talk with us. Ben is the co-founder of Fight Inequality Alliance. He's also a social activist and the writer of How to Fight Inequality and Why That Fight Needs You. Ben, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me on, Rick.
So, I look at this study that's just come out, and they say, look, 50 years of this tax policy of making the rich richer has harmed the working class and the poor, not just in the U.S., but in all of the advanced countries across the world. Are you surprised by that?
Not at all. Them's the facts. And that bears out everywhere, in every historical period, in every single part of the world. But here's what else is really important. It isn't the facts that determines what will happen. So the fact that it's now been proven how harmful, again and again been proven, but again with this new study, the fact that it's been proven won't change a damn thing, sad to say. Being right is not enough. When I looked back in history at all the times when inequality had been beaten, it wasn't because economists showed it in a study. It was because ordinary people won it.
Right, because the pitchforks came out.
Well, yeah, here's an optimistic thing, right? Some people are saying, well, this new president and vice president, some people are unconvinced about their personal determination to tackle inequality. They worry that they are keen to establish competence and decency and diversity, but are they really going to tackle inequality? People are worried. Now, here's the positive thing. Historically, it's not depended on who's at the top, on who's on stage. It's depended on us. In other words, is the Biden administration going to deliver action on inequality? Does not depend on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. It depends on us. Every single time when inequality is being tackled, it's because people pushed for it. It wasn't given by Kennedy and Johnson and Roosevelt. It was won by ordinary people, by workers, by black organizations, by trade unions, by progressive groups, women's groups, faith groups, pushing together. And again today, we see what the Reverend William Barber calls fusion coalitions. That is when all of us get together, when the young activists fighting for climate change and the workers fighting for decent jobs come together, push for things like a Green New Deal. It's that unity, it's that strength that brings change. So that's a really optimistic story. So as Christmas comes, I wouldn't say to people, feel down about how awful the economy has been to people, or feel down about how politics has often failed us, but feel optimistic, not in those above us, but in those around us, because we can do it. When we organize, we can do it.
No, if you go back to the mass explosion that built the most prosperous working class in the history of civilization right after World War II, it was because of those organizing efforts in the 20s and 30s of people who had been beaten down for so long that forced Roosevelt into pushing for those New Deal initiatives that did help build the working class. But I think back to the stories my grandfather told me of coming back from World War II and fighting just as hard on the shop room floor for just a meager share of the wealth that their labor created, and all of the blood, sweat, and tears and the lives that went into building that. Sadly, we've got to do it again, it seems.
Yeah, you can plot on a graph this thing called union density. Union density basically means how many people belong to a trade union, how many people are organized. Now, a lot of people think that if I join a trade union, then maybe my wages will improve. That's true, but it's much more than that. If you join a union, not only do your wages improve in that company, you get health and safety, you get a decent job, but also your country changes. That's when you get healthcare. That's when you get housing. That's when you get school. So being part of something, and a union's just part of it. Union's important, but also, faith groups can be a force for progressive change. We need to unify as well, bringing together all of the different progressive forces. When they organize and come together, that's when you win change. When the unions were suppressed, when the number of people who were part of a group went down, that's when inequality started to shoot through the roof. So it is possible to do so, but your grandfather was absolutely right. None of this was given. None of this was handed on a plate. Here's the fascinating thing. In the 50s and 60s, Republican as well as Democratic presidents oversaw progressive government action. In the 90s and the 2000s, you didn't get that from Democrats or Republicans. What that seems to tell us, and the same bears out, by the way, in England, in France, across the world. If you want change, voting's really important. Vote for the right guy. Don't vote for the crazy guy. That's really important. You've done that.
We've learned that.
Okay, but that's stage one. That is only stage one. So you've got to stay in the game, because don't be thinking, is some nice guy going to rescue me? No one has ever been rescued. People have only ever brought their own salvation, and they've never brought it as individuals. Rich people, they can be powerful on their own. If you're middle class or working class, that has never happened in the history of humanity, anywhere in the world, any place, any time. We've only ever been powerful together. So when we band together, we can win this. But this study that you shared, yes, it's true that the facts bear out that tax cuts for the rich deliver only for the rich. There's this phrase trickle down, not trickle down. Trickle down means they get sweet and we just get a sticky mess, right? Now, that's the facts, but the facts won't deliver us. What will deliver us is organizing. So this is our next challenge, but I'm really optimistic because I see so much fantastic organizing. And what I also see, which is really beautiful, is that the old competitiveness between different groups, one group saying, oh, but I'm for environmental justice, another group saying I'm for gender justice, another group saying I'm for racial justice, another group saying I'm for economic justice. All of those groups realize today it's the same fight. Now, we either win together or none of us win, right? Or as people used to say, we either hang together or we hang separately, right? But I think we're going to hang together, and I think we're going to win.
I'd prefer not to hang. I'd prefer to be rowing in the same direction. Can we go with rowing in the same direction?
Totally.
I'd prefer not to be hanging because here's the thing, and because I think the first realization is knowing that there's a problem. And look, I bring up that study to say, look, this is what we've been talking about for years. We've known this is a problem. We see it in our daily lives, and now we know that this isn't the policy we need to be going forward on. But we still need to do all the other things and organizing, like you've been talking about. To get the changes that we want. And there's the famous story, I think it was FDR, who said, if you want it from me, you got to get people out in the street to make me do it. He's not going to do it on its own. It's got to be demanded. There are no gifts. There's no benevolent employers. There's none of that. There's demands.
Absolutely. And we don't have to say, sometimes people think, oh, are you saying, these rich people are bad guys? Are you saying these governments are bad guys? I'm not saying that. I'm saying, however good they are, a good person has never handed this over, partly because they're also under pressure. They are under pressure from shareholders. They're under pressure from big, powerful interests. They themselves, the good ones, the smart ones, recognize that they do need to be pressured. If a leader promises you that the best thing for you to do is to be quiet, to never challenge, be really wary of that, of that leader. That's a real red signal.
Right.
The history shows it's come when we have pushed for it, and when we push for it in unity. And that is the way in which we will get it today. You hit on something though really important, which is that the myths of neoliberalism, the myths that somehow we can make it on our own, that somehow the rich are the ones who've worked hard and those who struggle are those who haven't worked enough. Those myths are really damaging. And they're not just on our TV screens, they're in our minds, they're in our hearts. We start to believe it. We start to believe that if we're struggling, if we're worried about whether we can get our kids presents at Christmas, it's our failure. Now, COVID has been brutal. COVID has been really, really harsh. It's a 9/11 every day in the US with COVID. But here's one positive thing about COVID. It's really exposed who the heroes are and who the schmucks are. Because the billionaires, right, running Amazon, etc., have raked in more money. They've got more rich in this pandemic, whilst ordinary people at the front lines, the nurses, the essential workers, they're the real heroes. Nobody's worshiping millionaires anymore. People are saying, you know, that the toys that your kids are going to want to play with is the nurse and the doctor and the teacher. They're the people on the front lines who we see are the real heroes. So it's really exposed that it's not, we never get delivered by the bosses. We get delivered by ordinary people together. The most extraordinary people are the most ordinary people. I think we've learned that from COVID. So that myth, perhaps it's broken its hold. Perhaps we're no longer trapped in this idea that somehow, you know, your bank balance is some kind of signifier of your moral contribution to society. What an obscene idea. I mean, especially now at Christmas time, to think about the obscenity of that idea. I mean, the how happy would be the Pharisees and Herod to think that that's what we were preaching today. I think we recognized instead that the values that need to animate us are the values we see in the shop floor and the values we see in the everyday kindness of people all around us. So that perhaps is one silver lining of the brutal COVID pandemic, is that we've realized the heroes are amongst us, and it's up to us to turn this around.
And the heroes are us. And then to highlight your point, you know, we just had a guy on the other day talking about how from the beginning of the pandemic until now, the wealth class of our country, the billionaire class, they've pocketed a cool $1 trillion during that time, while every state in our union has seen the average income of working people decline. So you see right in front of us a massive kind of redistribution of wealth. And the weird thing about it is, you know, given how screwed up our tax code is, that $1 trillion that they've gotten, they're going to probably pay a lower tax rate than most of the people who are working, driving the buses or you know, driving the trucks, or you know, delivering groceries, or doing the other things that our essential workers and our frontline heroes are actually doing.
Yeah, the rich now, they don't need to do anything. I mean, I met a wonderfully honest multimillionaire, a guy called Morris Pearl. We met in the heart of Manhattan, and he was telling me about his fortune. He said he'd retired from BlackRock several years ago. He said, I'm richer now than I've ever been. I've not been working, but my money makes money, right? And he said, my son, who's in college, he's richer than he's ever been, right? So what they're getting is the interest on the capital they have. That alone is getting the money. You know, we could tax the rich on their wealth. You know what the wealth tax is at the moment? Zero. Right. Zero. There is no tax on wealth whatsoever. All the tax is on income, right? We could tax the rich on their wealth, 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, or 5%, solve everything, right? And they wouldn't even get poorer. They'd still get richer, just less rich, less fast, right? So there is so much there. The only thing that is holding us back from using that wealth to get everyone into college, to get everybody free healthcare, to get everyone the security of knowing that their kids can make it, they can make it. Two things holding us back. One is their raw power, the way in which they impose influence on politicians and decision makers. The second one's much more insidious. The second one is we started to believe in them. And when we break that, when we break the hold of that myth, and we realize that, as you said, from the 1930s to the 1970s, we made progress as a whole society, right? The US got safer, it got richer, it got stronger. From the 1970s onwards, so we've had 5 decades of this under both Republican and Democrat governments, the working class people have got squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and the 1% have taken more wealth and more power, used that more power to generate more wealth. We can break that. Now's the moment. There's an exciting opportunity, but what we have to do first and foremost is to stop saying, perhaps someone's going to look after me, and realize that we're going to find that care and concern from our brothers and sisters. And the second thing we need to do is we need to devote our time to organizing, to planning. And the third thing we need to do is we need to stop the idea that somehow the person that threatens us is the person who comes desperate and hungry across the border, or the person who worships God in a different way, or the person who has a different skin color, or who speaks a different language to their children. The person who's going to make you poor has never come across the border in a blanket. They've arrived on a private jet.
It's absolutely the truth. And, you know, the one thing that the wealth class has always been good at is slicing and dicing us into every subsection possible. And I always use the famous quote attributed to railroad magnate Jay Gould, who said, "I can pay half the working class to murder the other half." We see that
Totally.
happen time and time again.
And there's a brilliant one from Martin Luther King. You know, Martin Luther King spoke with such empathy and kindness and love about the white working class, and including the Southern white working class. And he told a story about how at the beginning of the century, you had a movement in which former slaves, the descendants of former slaves, and poor landless whites, were challenging the Bourbon aristocracy, the white Southern aristocracy, the landholders, the ones who were giving them the terrible wages, the terrible conditions. They were challenging them together. The origin of Jim Crow, Martin Luther King explains, and all these hideous statues that people say are memorials to the lost cause and all that. The origin of that was a deliberate attempt that as the white poor challenged the white rich, they were told, no, you can't have anything to eat, but we'll give you hate. We'll give you supremacism. We'll give you somebody to look down on. And Martin Luther King has a beautiful passage. He says, and as his stomach, you know, crushed in on himself and he cried out in hunger, he was fed Jim Crow, right? So this old trick of telling people that your enemy is the person of the different race or the different faith or the different sexuality or the different gender, that is the oldest trick in the book. Because if the 1% ever said to you, vote for us, right? We'll make our friends richer and you poorer, nobody would vote for them. So they have to create a whole series of myths and stories about how the real aim of those who seek a fairer, kinder world is to destroy religion or destroy community or replace. They have to create these myths because they know that if they just told the plain facts, and the plain facts have been staring us in the face for 50 years, which is that working class people are worse off than they were. And the reason has absolutely zero to do with feminism or immigration or racial justice. The reason is 100% because the power shifted from ordinary people to bosses. And the reason why power shifted is because the unions, that is, people being part of a group, shrank. If we can rediscover community and solidarity, we'll be more powerful. When we're more powerful, we'll be better off.
There you go. Ben, I appreciate the time. Great stuff. The book, again, How to Fight Inequality and Why That Fight Needs You. We'll make sure we get links out on social media, how you can get that. I appreciate the time. I'd love to have you come back and talk to us again.
Thanks so much, Rick, and Merry Christmas.
Back at you. Thanks so much. Ben Phillips. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1760. That was the day that Deborah Sampson was born in Plimpton, Massachusetts. She was the first known woman to impersonate a man in order to fight in the Revolutionary War. Her family was poor. As a girl, young Deborah became an indentured servant. The hard farm work she performed built her physical strength. During the winter, when farm work was slow, Deborah worked as a school teacher. When she was 21, she dressed as a man and walked 30 miles to enlist in the 4th Massachusetts Regiment of the Continental Army at Bellingham. She called herself Robert Shirtliff. During battle, Deborah was shot in the leg. Fearing her secret would get out, she extracted the bullet herself, covering and hiding the wound. She served for 2 years without anyone discovering her true identity. Then she became ill with a fever. This time, she could not avoid a doctor's care, and her secret was exposed. She received an honorable discharge. Later, Paul Revere wrote a letter on her behalf to Congress, helping her to receive a soldier's pension. Deborah went on a speaking tour, sharing the story of her experiences. She wore her uniforms during her talks. Since the Revolutionary War, the ability of women to have a career in the military and serve in combat has been an issue for debate. In 2013, Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta lifted the ban on women in combat. The change opened more than 200,000 military positions to women for the first time. President Obama declared, "Valor knows no gender." Deborah Sampson surely would agree with that. Today's Labor History in 2 brought to you in memory of Carol Hillman, a passionate friend of workers and volunteer of the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
From kitchen tables worldwide, you can hear a chorus of parents chastising their children with the same refrain. Stop playing with your food. Children aside, this rebuke needs to be loudly directed at the profiteers of industrial agriculture. They keep toying with the very nature of food, not to benefit consumers, family farmers, workers, or the environment, but to fatten the profits of Silicon Valley tech giants, food monopolists, and Wall Street financiers. Meet Recombinetics, Inc. It's a high-tech gene manipulation corporation with bioengineers in its labs remaking farm animals. Pigs, for example. Recombinetics wants to mess with the very DNA of Mother Nature's oinkers to make them produce bigger litters to supply the pork factories of brand-name marketers. It's also genetically altering milk cows to withstand hotter weather, so climate change won't reduce the output of huge dairy corporations. Of course, this corporate government collusion to build Franken animals faces a high hurdle in the marketplace, for consumers have shown again and again that they don't want the food they put on their family tables tampered with. The tamperers, however, have a solution to that problem: secrecy. The industry is lobbying to outlaw any requirement that milk and meat produced by genetically altered animals be labeled as such. Better to keep consumers in the dark because, well, if given a free choice, people might reject Recombinetics in favor of natural food. This is Jim Hightower saying, the industrializers are not out to make food better or more affordable for us, but strictly to make it more profitable for them. Rather than remaking animals and the marketplace to benefit corporations that play with our food, let's remake the corporate system so that it cooperates with nature and serves the common good.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I woke up this morning and, as I do every morning, I check Twitter. I check for direct messages because I need to answer that. And then I check my emails. I want to make sure that, if anyone sent me an urgent email that I could respond accordingly. And my box was full of emails from our website. And I'm going, this is unusual. I mean, we usually get, 20, 30 here or there. But it was like 100 and like just a row of them. And I didn't recognize any of the names, all in Russian. And I'm going, is it possible that not only did Russia hack into all of our infrastructure, but they thought that my website was as important as where they could get the nuclear codes? And I found out that it was all just Russian porn. So I guess different hackers, a little different. But you got to wonder, now do the Russian porn people have our nuclear codes? Gotta wonder. Here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day. My favorite reporter in the whole world. She does fabulous work over at rawstory.com. Sarah Burris, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, happy holidays.
Back at you. Love the Santa hat and the logs burning in the background.
Yeah, later, if my stepdad's not being very nice, we're going to roast his chestnuts on the open fire.
Well, I heard you caught him.
Careful.
I heard you caught him. I heard that you walked in on him and he was watching Hallmark movies. Man card gone.
Apparently, my parents are just like addicted to these Hallmark movies because they always end happily. And my mom really likes the towns that they're in, and she's always like, "Oh, I wish I could live in a town like that." like, yeah, that's a back lot with a green screen behind you. There's really nothing exciting going on here. But then, you know, I work from home. And so my mom goes to work during the day. My stepdad's waiting for a contractor to meet up with him. So he's, you know, sitting around for a week. And so like I go in there to see what he's up to, and there's the Hallmark movie on. And then today, when I got off of work, I will go in there and I'm like, yay, it's my weekend. And he's watching freaking Lifetime. I'm like, what is wrong? Is there something that I did? Like, there's Red 2 was on the Sci-Fi Network. I was like, dude, come on. Like, that's a badass movie that we can, like, you know, bond over. And he's like, well, they kiss at the end. You know,
I see my wife.
Everybody gets sentimental.
Yeah, my wife is crazy into the Hallmark movies. In fact, the kids mock her constantly because it's all she watches are these crummy Hallmark movies. And they're all the same. It's the same plot, and it's the same, basically the same characters. I would say most of the time the same actors too. Yeah, absolutely. Patrick Duffy's in like all of them. But you know, the one thing she did say the other day to kind of mimic your point is she would like to have their decorating budget. She'd like to have their decorators come over, and that I'll give them. They do decorate.
Yeah. All that fake snow. We have the other night, whenever my parents were watching one, I went in there and we were trying to pick out whether the snow was CGI or not. That was the excitement of the evening.
Sarah. Maybe the Russians hacking all of our stuff isn't the end of the world. Maybe everyone watching these damn Hallmark movies is the end. Maybe this is the end of our civil. Maybe we are living through the rapture as we speak, and it's just not what we were told. It's all Hallmark movies.
Thank goodness. On Christmas, actual Christmas, they're going to release a ton of movies on Netflix and HBO Max and all of that. So life will be really good for about 3 weeks. Everybody's going to binge all that stuff, and then they're going to be like, what's next?
Yeah, well, maybe then we get through the virus. But let's talk about the hacking. Evidently, they're claiming that a whole bunch of our stuff's been hacked. And I got to tell you, I'm not surprised. With this administration, nothing surprises me. And I would have to guess it's probably been happening all along. It's just now we're finding out about it.
Yeah, so this first started about 9 months ago. They hacked stuff, and they have been sitting and watching for about the last 9 months until they actually started pulling stuff off of the servers, and they were caught. It started with the Commerce Department, the Treasury Department. These were the first two that we knew for certain were hacked. The Department of Homeland Security. And then today we found out the Energy Department, which is the department where all of our nuclear weapons go through. So the good news with all of that is Natasha Bertrand from Politico got confirmation from the Energy Department that they did not hack into any of the secure nuclear stuff, the stockpile, none of that. Apparently that is on something that is inaccessible to the internet, or I don't know. It's basically run by Lance Armstrong on a bicycle. I got nothing. But I would say too, the Department of Homeland Security also said that none of their secure server things were taken. So good news among the bad. But we basically spent how many billions of dollars for the last 5-6 years to make sure that this didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it happened. And one of the things that I learned today, and I think we all probably knew it, but hadn't really put all of the pieces together. Trump has been spending a whole lot of money that goes to the Pentagon, that goes to military stuff on things like tanks, boats, ships, submarines, planes, and the damn wall. For the last, year. All of that money could also have been spent on things like cybersecurity or cyber warfare or, any kind of national security that is involved in anything remotely cyber. All of that work has been basically done on a shoestring budget at the United States because all of this money has been going to Trump's stupid ass wall and all of his I want big ships because I'm a big tough man. But that's not how our wars are fought anymore. The story that I read about today quoted a military analyst or a military consultant who has been basically telling the Pentagon since the 1990s, you guys are operating one military and you're actually using another. You should really stop it. And they're like, oh, God, that's so smart. Can you come back next year and tell us the exact same thing? And this has been going on for decades. So you just have to keep wondering, like, why are we doing this? Why are we investing in a military that is going to war in a way that is so outdated and antithetical to any kind of success? Like, most countries don't fight us anymore because we are so big that you are not going to defeat us. So instead, they do something like throwing a banana peel on the tarmac, right? Hacking into our systems. That is very easy and inexpensive for other countries who can't afford a big military. And we're just like, oh, I want tanks.
But this is one of those things where you go, there've got to be smart people who have known this for a while. And this is where I think most of us go, yeah, but we can do both. We can have our big wars and still have, the tanks that aren't going to be able to do anything anymore because they're going to be able to shut them off at some point through satellites. But never mind that. But we can do both. We can have, cyber stuff because we're hacking them too, right?
Yeah, we are. I don't know the degree to which we're hacking because they never really, that's not announced that Russians don't find out, oh, Americans run our system and we found you and this is what you were doing. Like, that never really makes it to... Right, because isn't this the mutually assured RP. Destruction
angle that we I grew up with anyway? I don't know if you remember it, but I remember, at the end there, before the Soviet Union fell, that, we thought, everybody's going to start pushing buttons and everything's going to start blowing up soon. Now the mutual assured destruction, we're going to start turning off each other's lights.
Yeah. We're going to start eliminating people's ability to play solitaire, which is that's anarchy waiting to happen, especially during a pandemic when something like this is going on. People are going to take away your Hallmark movies.
They're going to take away your Hallmark movies. That's right. No more Netflix. No, I mean, seriously, there's a spy museum in D.C. that I took the kids to a couple years ago. And at the end of it, well, the Spy Museum had some great stuff in it. Really cool stuff that they've used, that spies have used. It's cool stuff. But at the end of it, they have this display, this whole big room that says, what happens when the lights go out? And it's a joke. Oh, we're just going to turn each other's lights off. But what actually happens when the power goes out? And they say, within a couple of days, food deliveries stop. Within a couple of days, people start, dying of thirst because the waters are shut off. And then you go down this list within 2 or 3 weeks of the power being off. We're a chaotic society. So it's not, while it's funny, we're going to just turn each other's lights off. Turning off each other's lights is really mutually assured destruction.
This is why everybody should be investing in solar power and water collection. That's like the weird sort of
the prepper
and me. It totally is.
Prepper Sarah, okay.
I have a Go Kit, that has bottled water and snack bars. Anyway, I have a plan. In the event of a zombie apocalypse, a samurai sword. But here's the thing, like, this is not so far-fetched anymore. And what is frightening to me is the cavalier attitude that the White House has. Like, I can make jokes from here to Christmas about this stuff, but when the president isn't even acknowledging that this is an issue, that's a serious problem. He is so close to Russia that, he's still tweeting about the election, and you're wondering, like, is everybody okay over there? Like, is he getting briefed? Is he asleep at the wheel? I think he showed up to the White House. The Marine was outside of his door. Whenever he's in the office, there's a Marine that stands outside the door. So reporters can always tell when he's in the office. I think once since the election, he's been in the Oval Office. So, who's getting these briefings? Who's finding out about this? Who's behind the wheel?
Nobody.
Is there anyone?
There's nobody, but do you think he was getting them all along? I mean, this is the other part of this. Has he been doing this job all along, or we've been just on autopilot this entire time? And this is what we're going to find out when Joe Biden takes office, just how much neglect has happened over the last 4 years. Is the White House going to be in the same condition that Trump Plaza is in Atlantic City, that they're going to push the button and blow up on the 29th of January?
And the other part of it is, is there going to be any kind of investigation so that we, the public, know what has been going on for the last 4 years? Like, it's one thing if the Biden administration comes in and they're like, oh my God, you guys haven't changed the light bulbs, or like, everything is broken, all the keys are missing on the keyboard, or whatever, right? It's a different thing, I think, for the American people to know what exactly has been going on, what our government is doing or not doing, and where mistakes were made. We did this after the 9/11 incident, and where we were attacked, and we had this commission where we talked about what failed. And so I think it's important for us to talk about, not just about COVID, but obviously we have been attacked by Russia. This is a national security breach. This is a military attack. And I want to have a 9/11 style commission to understand, like, we spent all this money. What did it go to? Why didn't it work? Who screwed up? And what are we going to do to fix it and make sure it never happens again?
Yeah. We're going to blame Iran.
He'll blame China. He'll come up with some reason to blame China.
No, look, I don't doubt that China's hacking us too. It's just that Russia's right now a little bit better at it.
Well, the thing about China is they hack for financial gain. So they're going to hack Sony. They're going to hack, all of these big companies because they want to steal intellectual property. I don't think they care about, hacking into our electrical grid or trying to bring the United States to its knees. They just want to make money.
Right.
And I think that is what makes Russia more frightening to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's most certainly scary times. But here's the thing, and this is where I find it really interesting where we are in our politics. While Russia's hacking us, while they, who knows what they've gotten, because we sure don't, we're debating whether Dr. Biden should be using doctor or not. I mean, that's how screwed up this entire situation is in our country, where I had to find the Russian hack story on back page of a website, early this morning. By afternoon, it was in more places. But the Jill Biden thing was literally everywhere. That's all I've seen for the last couple of days, because some schmuck has a problem with Dr. Biden using Dr. Biden. I don't get it. I got to think that this is a person who maybe has never stepped foot on a college campus, because to be honest, most of the college professors I had went by doctor, because they had the doctorate of education or the PhD or whatever. It seems weird that now we're going to choose now.
What is it about this guy that is so fragile that he has to decide that he's going to attack some woman he's never met, who isn't elected, who's literally just a first lady? She's just married to the guy, right? Like, we've talked about this before. She wants to work, wants to continue to teach whenever she's in the White House, which is because she's dedicated to education and to the community college that she works for. This guy basically attacked Dr. Biden, not just because she goes by doctor, but because she has taught students at a community college level, which he says are basically just remedial kids or people who are slow. Okay, I couldn't afford to go to the university and pay for all of my classes in one semester. And I also was working 3 jobs at the same time. So I took some classes at the university, some classes at a community college, and then I basically just fit in every job that I possibly could for my entire education. And I made it through in 4.5 years and did all summer classes. Like, I would have loved to have gone to Smith College, right? Like, my family went from, in 3 generations, we went from my grandfather being born in a house with a dirt floor to me being the first in my family to go to college. And this guy is so elitist that he thinks that somehow going to a community college makes you slow because he went to Yale. I would love to have gone to Yale. I would still love to get, my law degree from Yale. But, I just paid off my BA, right?
Right.
Who can afford that? So it's just that kind of thing. It's one thing, like he's not just attacking Dr. Biden. He's not just going after her dissertation, which was all about education retention for kids at the community college level. But he's also saying that somehow going to a community college makes you remedial. And it's so frustrating because this is the kind of attitude that I feel like Republicans have spent years shaming, working people for, getting extra skills, doing some sort of education outside of the four-year college system. We've been talking about this for several years now, where it's like, you really don't need to have a four-year degree to do a whole heck of a lot of jobs. And why are we not instead encouraging more community college education? And this guy thinks that, it's only remedial kids that are going. I can't even tell you how furious I was last night. I was fuming. I had to walk around the couch several times.
Look, as you should be. I mean, the reality is community colleges are where people go and they can't afford to go to Yale. It's not that they couldn't get in; they probably can't afford it. I mean, it is the cost sensitive issue because people don't want to take on a lifetime of student debt. And I've known you for years, and it's been a burden for you. And look, right now, the House just rolled out a plan to roll back, I guess, something like $50,000 in student loan debt if when Biden becomes president. And I think it's a great first step. I don't think it's the answer. I don't think it should stop there. Because if we do just that, okay, well, we've picked a segment of the population that won. What about the next group of kids who have to go through college? Mm-hmm. What are we doing to lower the costs and make it more accessible like it was in the 50s and 60s to where you went as far as your talents could take you and you didn't end up with a lifetime of debt? We need to solve those problems. And also, to your point, we need to put some faith back into education again, where we respect it, because sadly, what you're talking about with this idiot is that he just doesn't respect her because she's a woman or because of the work that she did academically either.
And that's the thing. We've had years and years of Republicans who don't respect educators. They don't want to fund schools. They don't want to pay teachers. I mean, Oklahoma has been, I'm obviously at my parents' house. Oklahoma has been one of the worst states in the country for whenever it comes to paying teachers. A lot of our teachers, the really, really great, master's degree teachers who have fought to have better education and be better teachers, they leave. They go to Texas because they know that they can make more money there. Or they go to Kansas because they know they'll pay better there. They go somewhere else, anywhere else, because Oklahoma is one of the worst states in the country for paying our teachers because we don't respect education. And so here's this guy who's claiming that, community college kids are slow and, Dr. Biden got this doctorate that she didn't deserve. And I just have to wonder, okay, so what's your solution to all of this? Do you think that people should go to college? Do you think that everybody should go to a four-year university? Do you think that nobody should go to a community college? Do you think everybody should have a doctorate? What is your role here? And the thing is, the guy doesn't have an advanced degree. He has his bachelor's degree. And that was sort of what happened with Tucker Carlson last night. He was trashing Jill Biden as well. And I got to looking and I was like, gee, I wonder what Tucker Carlson's dissertation is about. I mean, he's trashing Jill Biden's dissertation. So what's his dissertation on? Oh, he doesn't have one.
So it's a jealousy
he never got
thing,
an degree. You have to wonder, is this somebody whose ego is just so fragile that they see a woman who has, a better education, she has 2 master's degrees and a doctorate, and maybe they're jealous of that. Maybe their penis is too small. I don't know.
I didn't say that. None of my business. Okay, there you go. We're going to leave that one right there. But I just think it's stupid. I think we've got so many other things that we have to worry about, that whining on about whether, we should be calling her doctor, of which I will, because it's a sign of respect. It's insane. Because look, I know if we go down this rabbit hole, there's a whole bunch of people who are doctor this or doctor that I guess you could go after and attack that they chose not to, which I find very telling.
Dr. Martin Luther King, right?
Right.
Does everybody think that he doesn't deserve a doctorate? I'd love for them to make that assessment.
Now, if Bill Cosby runs around saying that he's Dr. Bill Cosby, I kind of have a problem with that because that was an honorary thing. He didn't earn that. And a whole list of other problems. But if you earned it, if you went and you did the work, damn right you got the right to use it. That's simple.
Especially if you paid for it. I mean, good God, that stuff's expensive.
That is expensive. And finally, where's Trump going to go when he leaves? Or if he leaves? I understand that there was talk of potentially a sit-in on Inauguration Day. I don't imagine Trump sitting on the floor. I can't imagine that. But I would love to see it, and I would love to see them dragging him out. That would be fun.
Oh, man. Bless his heart. Bless his poor old heart. So nobody wants him to live in New York anymore. I don't think anybody really liked him in New York to begin with. Now he's talking about moving to Palm Beach and living at Mar-a-Lago. The problem is that he has a deal that he made with Palm Beach County in 1993 when he purchased Mar-a-Lago and started this big club and all of this, that he, had to abide by all of these rules. No more than 500 members at the club. Nobody can stay there for more than 7 days a month or 21 days a year, which I thought was interesting because I'm pretty sure he's violated that several times. And the stories that I've read about this, the reports I've read have said that he has, the neighbors have, for the most part, been amenable and understanding of the fact that this is a security issue, this is the president. But now that he's talking about moving, they're like, could you maybe just buy a house like a normal person? But I think the thing is that if he buys a house, he buys it. Whereas Mar-a-Lago is already purchased and he can use that as a house without actually having to pay any money for it. I think that's what's really going on here, is that he doesn't want to spend the money.
Yeah, he's broke.
And he likes the free omelet bar, which I can totally understand.
You would think with his money he could hire someone to, follow him around with an omelet bar.
Right?
Yeah.
Seriously.
Especially when he starts Trump TV and, all of the minions give him $6 a month.
Yeah, absolutely. You think he could probably, I wouldn't be surprised if he demanded that some Secret Service agent make him omelets every morning. Or he's got like 70 kids. Why can't he make one of them do it? Ivanka just bought a $30 million house off the coast of Miami on a little island that's known as Billionaire's Bunker.
Yeah.
Is what they call it. So maybe he can just live in her basement.
There you go. Live in her basement.
Like
Good
Cato.
stuff. Sarah, I appreciate the time. I hope you have a wonderful holiday. I look forward to talking to you in the new year.
Thank you. Be very careful roasting your chestnuts on an open fire.
There you go. Our good friend Sarah Burris. Make sure you check out her work over at Raw Story. She does fantastic stuff. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
And now comes a historic opportunity. This administration can deliver policies and resources that will create jobs, rise to the climate challenge, and equitably serve all Americans.
President-elect Biden's cabinet nominations focus on jobs and climate. Trump administration declines protections for endangered butterflies. Plus,
these are people who build. And so this is the most rapid way to put people to work coming out of the COVID crisis.
Washington Governor Jay Inslee unveils ambitious clean energy jobs plan.
All of those ambitions and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
You can still be terrified about the pace at which we are burning up the planet.
Good, because I am. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, we are learning who Joe Biden hopes will be in his cabinet when it comes to the climate, and it looks like he's got some pretty good people in store.
Oh, yes, he does. And we'll get to that in a moment. First, the bad news. The Trump Fish and Wildlife Service announced this week that it will not consider listing the Monarch Butterfly for endangered species status until at least 2024, saying other species are higher on the priority list. The iconic butterfly's population has declined 99% over the last 20 years due to development and the explosive growth of chemical pesticides in industrial agriculture.
What do you mean other species are higher up on the list? Is there a limit of how many species can be added to the endangered list?
They are required by some court orders to prioritize other species first.
Okay. Can the Biden administration change those priorities?
Oh, yes.
Okay. I'll look forward to it.
And Trump's Federal Emergency Management Agency has proposed to slash disaster aid to states by making it substantially harder for them to qualify for assistance after extreme weather events like floods, wildfires, and storms.
Also can be changed by Joe Biden?
Yes.
Good.
In politics, President-elect Joe Biden pushed forward on climate action this week, a stark contrast from the science denial and destruction of U.S. climate policy under the Trump administration.
Also good.
Biden's transition team announced this week the Biden White House will host a climate summit of the world's major economies within his first 100 days to begin rebuilding U.S. credibility on international climate policy.
We got a lot of rebuilding to do.
Biden also advanced his pledge for a whole-of-government approach on climate change. This week, Biden tapped former Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Gina McCarthy to head up domestic climate policy, a new cabinet-level position with authority to coordinate climate action across agencies and would dovetail with John Kerry's international role as global climate envoy. McCarthy's expertise will be useful in crafting climate policy in the executive branch if Republicans continue to hold the U.S. Senate.
You mean if they continue to hold the U.S. Senate hostage?
Biden also nominated former Michigan Governor Jennifer Granholm, who embraced renewable energy as governor of a Rust Belt state, to head up the Department of Energy, seen as a move to accelerate the Energy Department's advanced battery and clean energy research and U.S. automakers' transition to all-electric vehicles.
And yet the Energy Department deals with nuclear energy, nuclear security. Does Jennifer Granholm have any background experience at all in that?
No, but she is a competent administrator.
There you go. Just because she's a woman, you're taking her side.
We can own the electric vehicle market. With those 500,000 charging stations, we can put 1 million jobs back in Detroit and in the Midwest, building cars.
Biden highlighted his campaign pledge to build a national electric vehicle charging network in announcing former campaign rival Pete Buttigieg to head the sprawling Department of Transportation, the first millennial and first openly gay member to serve in a cabinet position. In accepting the nomination, Buttigieg highlighted infrastructure projects he spearheaded as a mayor in Indiana and noted that upgrading our transportation infrastructure will be a massive jobs generator.
At its best, transportation makes the American dream possible, getting people and goods to where they need to be, directly and indirectly creating good-paying jobs. America has given this administration a mandate to build back better. And step one in building back better, literally, is to build.
Finally, Washington State Governor Jay Inslee released a new state-level plan to create jobs in energy, transportation, and infrastructure over the next 2 years, with energy efficiency building retrofits, updating the state's electric grid and flood controls, electrifying the state's ferry system, and more, telling Time magazine that U.S. states are key to restoring U.S. credibility.
Every year we have more success in our states to be able to share with the rest of the world to demonstrate that America is in the game and is making progress.
Well, I don't know if we're in the game, but it will be good to get back in it. Soon, like now. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So we've been talking a lot the last couple of weeks about, where do we go from here on January 20th when Donald Trump leaves the White House, and he will. What kind of a society will we reimagine? There's been a lot of talk about remaking the future out of this pandemic, taking this crisis and moving to a better future, a more perfect union, so to speak. I'm here to share some thoughts on maybe how we can reimagine that future. I've asked Rabbi Michael Lerner to come talk with us. He's the author of Revolutionary Love, a political manifesto to heal and transform the world. Rabbi, thanks for taking time for us.
Glad to be with you.
So we hear a lot of this, out of this crisis, we can rise a better society, a more egalitarian society. We can have better distributed wealth. We can have a better future, no?
We certainly can have a better future, although we didn't have to wait. We could have started that 50 years ago. But let me say what the central issue about this in this society that has to be repaired is the ethos of selfishness, of looking out for number one. Most people in this society don't actually like that, but they believe that everybody else is going to act on that principle of looking out for number one, so they better do the same thing. They don't want to be the one jerk on the block that is proposing as something that is more aligned with the Bible and higher values that come out of the religious traditions, when they think that everybody else has learned from their childhood even that they have to maximize their own interests without regard to the consequences for others. Now, what I'm saying in this book, Revolutionary Love, is that has caused tremendous amount of pain for middle-income working people. How do I know that? Because I did a study supported by the National Institute of Mental Health of literally thousands and thousands of middle-income working people. And over again, they told me that they had jobs that were extremely frustrating, that didn't give them any opportunity to serve any higher good than maximizing money, usually the money of the people who own and control the corporations that they're working for. A few cases, maximizing their own money. But in any event, they come out of work and they feel rotten about it. And so they don't like that that's the way it is, and yet they totally believe that it would be everybody else wants it that way, and so they have to pursue self-interest. And but when you have a society based on self-interest, what happens? You get the highest divorce rate in the world. Because why? Because people enter into marriages more and more and more on the basis of, hey, I'll marry the one who's going to satisfy most of my needs more than anybody else is likely to fall for me. But the problem with that is people in marriages no longer feel secure because they know that their partners have made that same calculation, and that at some time or other they may calculate, hey, I meet this other person who might satisfy more of my needs. I'll break down this marriage and go to another one. So the ethos of selfishness is brought home from the world of work. It's basic to the capitalist economy. It's the way the capitalist economy works. But it's a way that leads so many people into deep despair. Middle-income working men have the highest level of suicides. Why? Not because they're not having enough money, but because we controlled for that. That's not the issue. The issue is their lives feel empty and pointless. But there's one other dimension that is also part of why people are in a great deal of pain. They've been brought up to think that this is a meritocracy. Meritocracy means a society based on merit, right, and that anybody can make it if they really try. Now, the truth of the matter is that there's a class structure here. There's a small percentage of people at the top who have consolidated amongst them close to 70% of the wealth of the society. If that's the top 1%. If you go to the top 10%, then you've got almost 80% of the wealth of the society given to the top 10% of income earners. Well, what that does is it makes the other 80% The other 80% feel, or 90, close to 90%, feel terrible about themselves because they feel like I screwed up. And so self-blaming is something that we discovered in our research. It goes throughout almost everybody in the society. Everybody has a story, usually that they don't even tell their partners or their closest friends because they don't want to feel that they're going to be looked at as a failure. But the internal story that most people have is, I screwed up. I wasn't smart enough. I did something wrong. Well, as long as you have that, you have people in great deal of pain, personal psychological pain. They seek to alleviate it, sometimes through drugs, sometimes through alcohol, sometimes through a variety of other things that keep their attention away from the pain that they're feeling. But part of the reason why they don't feel like they have a right to struggle against a workplace that is unfulfilling and really often is producing things that have either no value or a negative value. They're destroying the environment at the same time. They don't want to think about that because then they think they'll have nobody to blame but themselves. And that explains why we have so many people who have moved to the right. You see, there's in the liberal and progressive world, people say, well, why so many people voted for Trump? Well, it's because they're racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, anti-Semitic, or they're stupid. Well, when people hear that, who already are feeling like, oh, the reason I don't have a job that's more fulfilling is because I failed in some way, and then they hear this, they say, oh, yuck, I don't want to have anything to do with those people. They don't know anything about my life.
Right.
My life is very hard.
No, you're absolutely right, and I've yet to hear the radical part of what you're saying yet, because I agree with you. And on the side of the Trump supporters, while there are some racist and homophobes and all of those things that you ticked off, the majority of them, and I would agree with you, are people who they grew up believing, as I did, that if you work hard, you play by the rules, you're going to get ahead, and they haven't. That they believe that meritocracy, they believe what I've been told my entire life. Hooray for me and the hell with everybody else, and the one with the most toys wins, and all of that Reagan-esque kind of nonsense. So
yes.
How do you move back from that? Because it's so ingrained in our culture. So when I see a title like Revolutionary Love and this idea that you have of creating another political party around the idea of love and justice, I'm going back to the 60s and the flower children and the mockery that became out of that. How do you sell that?
Well, number one, there's nothing wrong with what people did in the 60s. They stopped that damn war where over 55,000 Americans died in that war for no reason. It was a losing war from the start. It was a senseless war from the start. We said, oh no, if we let the Vietnamese create a socialist society, the next thing you know, all of capitalism will crumble. Well, guess what? They succeeded in creating their socialist society, and they're friends with the United States. But that was colossal. So thank God for the people who demonstrated in the 60s and who were put down by others and saying, oh, yeah, you're flower children because you don't want war. That war was a disaster, and we could do well with a lot less wars. We don't need those wars. The next big war we got into was in Iraq, and it was, again, another disaster. What we created was we threw over one government, and we got other governments that couldn't control anything. Next thing you know, the worst kinds of Muslim extremists were taking over, and we had to fight against them, and we never won that fight. So just lots and lots of people wasting their lives.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with you. You want to call the idea of building a society based on love flower children? Fine. If you ever have been influenced by the Bible, and you know that the Bible says not only love your neighbor as yourself, but in the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, it says over 37 times, it says, love the stranger. love the other, treat others that you don't even know, love them, care for them. And I saw that happen on the day that the towers came down, 9/11 in 2001, and thousands of people heard about it on television and went down to the towers and tried to rescue people. There was so much caring about other people. Caring about other people is the normal place that people come from. They have to be taught that you should look out for yourself. They don't have to be taught to care for other people. Over 300 people who were not in those towers went up and got policemen, firemen, and lots of other people went up into those towers and saved people, and over 300 of them lost their lives caring for other people. Now, I don't want you to have to lose your life, but I do want a society that is based on a new bottom line. The old bottom line is you're rational, you're productive, if you maximize money and power. I say in this book, Revolutionary Love, which I think many people who voted for Trump would get a lot out of anyway, is that the problem, the new bottom line we need says that every institution, our corporations, our government policies, our economy, our judicial system, our cultural system, our educational system should be judged efficient, rational, and productive, not to the extent of how much they get people can maximize money and power, but rather how much they foster in people the capacity to be loving and caring, kind and generous, ethically and environmentally sensitive, and able to treat other human beings as embodiments of the sacred, not looking at every other human being in terms of, hey, what can I get from you? How are you going to take care of my needs, rather than seeing them as fundamentally valuable, even if they don't take care of your needs? Every human being as an embodiment of the sacred, and looking at the earth not from the standpoint solely of, hey, can we pull some resources out of the earth and make a buck on it, but rather looking at the earth as something that is an amazing reality that deserves a response of awe and wonder and radical amazement at the grandeur of creation and the amazing reality of this universe. Yeah. So that's a new bottom line, and that we could build a society based on that. Now, I'm not calling for a new party. I'm calling for a new movement. The movement is one that is for love and justice. We like a just society. We need a more just society. We need to end the radical inequality in wealth between the super wealthy and all the rest of us. But we also need to build a society based on love. And that's my problem with the New Deal. It delivered objective caring in the form of money and entitlements, but it didn't deliver simultaneously a caring society, a society that cared about people. So you get these government bureaucracies which stink, whether they're in Russia or whether they're in the United States or wherever they are. We need a government in which you get rewarded if you're working for the government for how well you do at caring for people, not for how quickly you get done with them. And so, I mean, these are ideas that I'm throwing out to you in our 16 or 17 minutes here. But I promise you, if you read the book Revolutionary Love, you will find that this is not all nonsense. But people respond sometimes by saying, well, it's beautiful what you're saying, Rabbi Lerner, but it's so impractical. It's impossible. It's unrealistic. And I say back to them, okay, this is the time to be unrealistic, because being realistic really means telling yourself and others that I will do what the people who control the media and who control the government and control the big corporations are telling you is realistic. And what they're telling you is what's realistic is what gives them the best outcome, but it doesn't give the rest of us the best outcome. So don't be realistic. Don't listen to all the wise people who are telling you it'll never happen. That's the same thing they said about ending apartheid in South Africa. That's the same thing they said about ending segregation in the United States. It's the same thing they say whenever there's a new courageous idea. Everybody says, "Oh no, it's unrealistic." But it's the only thing that makes something unrealistic is our together decisions to ignore it and try to live within a society that gives us a lot of pain and which we end up blaming ourselves for.
Again, the book Revolutionary Love, written by Rabbi Michael Lerner. We'll make sure we get links out on social media. Last question I've got for you, because we hear, especially during this season, this holiday season, a lot about religion, and I know a lot of my Trump supporters are extremely religious. They make sure that they tell us at every turn. I hear an awful lot about the prosperity gospel, and God wants us all to be rich. How does that square with what you're talking about? How do we use faith and religion to kind of push this along? Because I grew up in the Catholic Church believing in peace and social justice. That was the church when I grew up. The things that you talked about, feeding the hungry, clothing the naked, shelter for the homeless, visiting prisoners, all of those, caring for the sick, all of those things. That's not who we are today. And that's not where our religion has seemed to take a lot of us. So how does it square with how do we balance that?
Okay, first I do want to say as an aside, by the way, you're looking for Rabbi Michael Lerner, Lerner. Some people go into Learner. No, it's Lerner. Now, in terms of religion, Jesus never said make a buck. That's a total distortion of what Christianity is about. People have taken it and twisted it to its opposite. The Bible in the Torah talks so often about our obligation to take care of each other, and that teaching was all through the prophets, and it was all through Jesus. So people have created a phony gospel to replace the real gospel, a phony God to replace the real God. The real God of this universe is telling us care for each other, build a society, what I call it the caring society, caring for each other and caring for the earth. That simple slogan is what we should all be about. And religious people who teach you that it's about making money are actual idol worshipers. They don't believe in the teachings of Jesus. They don't believe in the teachings of the prophets. They don't believe in the teachings of the Torah. They are idol worshipers, and they will. Their time will come.
They'll get there on their $60 million jets.
What?
They'll get there on their $60 million jets wherever they go. Again, the book, Revolutionary Love, A Political Manifesto to Heal and Transform the World, written by Rabbi Michael Lerner. We'll make sure we get links out on social media, how folks can get this, maybe get it for the holiday. A good gift. Rabbi, I appreciate the time. I'd love to have you come back in the new year and talk about this as things continue down the road.
Great. I'm happy to do that. And you're right. Revolutionary Love is a great book for a gift for people who who would like to think about something different than what they've been taught that is the only truth: money, power.
Excellent stuff.
We want a different vision.
Good stuff. Rabbi, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
God bless you.
Again, the book Revolutionary Love. We'll get links out on social media how you can pick that up. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
The day that President Franklin Delano Roosevelt rescinded Executive Order 9066. It had forcibly relocated over 120,000 Japanese Americans into internment camps. After the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the government considered Japanese Americans a national security threat. By 1942, many were given less than a week's notice to sell and store all property. Whole families were rounded up and taken away to desolate areas in the west and southwest of the United States. Up to this point, many Japanese Americans in California were employed in the agricultural industry, some as tenant farmers. They were responsible for 40% of all produce grown in that state, whose crops were valued at $40 million annually. Over 6,000 farms consisting of 200,000 acres were confiscated. Once interned, they were subjected to dire living conditions with little in the way of running water, sanitary facilities, or medical care. They were subject to forced labor in the construction of camp buildings and cultivation of near barren lands. The government hoped to make the camps self-sufficient. In Poston, Arizona, they were made to build the infrastructure for Colorado River Tribe's reservation in order to consolidate other tribes onto the land. When Japanese Americans were finally released, most found their stored belongings stolen and their homes, jobs, and farms confiscated and redistributed. After the war, they continued to face violence, job and housing shortages, and racial discrimination. Ronald Reagan would sign the Civil Liberties Act in 1988. It acknowledged that internment was based on, quote, race prejudice, war hysteria, and a failure of political leadership. The act served as a formal apology and sought to distribute billions in reparations.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I've got hopes for the new year. As I've been saying, it's going to be an interesting time between now and January 20th. And as we started off today's program with, I have very little faith in this administration. I have very little faith in their ability to do the right thing when we need it. And this rollout of the vaccine already, terrible. I don't even know where to go with it. They're already, Pfizer's come out and said, they're basically botching this. Their warehouse is full. We should have trucks lined up. We should have convoys of trucks lined up getting this vaccine out. And you gotta think at a certain level that this is a huge part of what's going on right now is the fact that Trump's having his little meltdown, the little tirade that continues, all of the lawsuits that have gone on, all of the whining and complaining. He lost. It is what it is. And it has been the diversion. The fact that yesterday we lost 3,500 people, more than on 9/11. And as a society, we didn't really blink. Frightening. Absolutely, absolutely frightening. And as I've been hoping, come January 20th, maybe we get a new start. Maybe there's a new opportunity to do things differently and better, to put faith back in our government, to do what we the people need when we need it done. Sadly, and I go back to Inauguration Day 2017. The horror, the horrible, the grift, the lies, the failure, all of the things that we predicted on that day were in no way up to the level of what we've experienced over the last 4 years. And Trump's departure, I hope, will be a good thing for our country as we move into a new era. And maybe we have an opportunity to grow from this, to awaken from the cult of personality and become Americans again as a whole. Today is our last program for the year. I have decided that we're going to run through to the end of the year. We'll be back on January the 4th. We've got some remodeling to do, some some things that need to be done, and, well, spend some time with our families. So I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone for the year that we've had. Thank you for all of the input, all of our guests throughout the year who have come and spoke with us, and for the folks who we will greet in the new year and move forward together with. As always, thank you so much. If you missed any of today's show, thericksmithshow.com, that's where you go to get it. I hope you have a healthy, happy, safe holiday season, and we together have an incredible new year of rebirth, better opportunity, and growth. Thanks again so much. We'll see you back here next year.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.